Welcome, everyone, to the Building Code, Buildertrend's flagship podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Matern.
And I'm Charley Burrows.
We're so excited today to be joined by Jim Tobin, the president and CEO at the NAHB, also known as the National Association of Homebuilders. Charley, what are we going to talk about today on the podcast?
Well, Courtney, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We have been wanting to get Jim on the podcast for a long time. And this is, what they would say in the industry, a big get for us. So I'm fired up. Hopefully you're fired up too.
Yeah, I feel like this is the moment. This means we've made it. We've made it in construction podcasting. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're going to talk about the main theme of today's episode is going to be talking about the election cycle and talking about what it means for builders, what sort of policies and changes can they expect to see, how they should stay up to date and be informed about those and how those ultimately are going to affect their businesses moving forward. Jim has been in the industry for a long, long time, and he has builders' best interests at heart. So I think our listeners will find this really, really educational, informative, and hopefully inspiring as well, too.
Yeah, and the election is already underway when this episode drops. Early voting starts in a lot of states early, all the way up to election day. But the election cycle and being involved with talking to your representatives, it's never ending. It never sleeps. So Jim's going to probably have some good advice there, too, on how to stay involved, how to stay connected to make sure that our industry's voice is heard. So let's get Jim in here.
Hey, Jim, welcome to the Building Code. We are super pumped to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Charley. Great to have you. Courtney, great to be with you.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here.
Thanks.
Courtney and I were talking. This is as excited as we've been for a podcast yet in a long time. So really appreciate it.
Well, that's very kind. Hopefully the hype will live up to the actual content. But yeah, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it. We've been planning this for a while, so it's great to join you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on, just leading up to the election and getting your expertise on what our industry can expect. But you have a long career. You've been involved with the NAHB for 20 plus years, plus experience with officials in lobbying in DC. So can you just kick it off by telling us about your career, telling us about your role at the NAHB?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start from today and work my way backwards.
Yeah.
So I'm the CEO of the National Association of Homebuilders, and really just about a year and 4 or 5 months into the job, but a veteran of NAHB. I've been with the association since 1998. So just came over my just past my 26th anniversary, and really grew up on the government affairs side. I was the chief lobbyist for a decade here at NAHB, and really did a lot of policy work on taxes, on environmental policy, and just lobbying in general. And then when the opportunity came for the CEO role came open, I put my name in the hat and was able to win the job. So just a career capstone for me to be able to lead this great association and continue the work that I've done here on behalf of the best industry in the country. We're 16% of U.S. GDP. We are the people that are going to build the housing in America. And so between the CEO role, but my role is in government affairs. I transitioned to NHB after leaving Capitol Hill and working for a couple of different members of the House of Representatives. So I've been in policy my whole professional career, and be able to do it now at this level, and for this industry at this moment is really exciting.
Yeah, that is super exciting and a great intro there. Like Courtney said, the reason we wanted to have you on today is obviously we have an election cycle coming up and everyone gets a little antsy around election time. But to the point you just made specifically for home builders, when it comes to the economy and the impact of an election cycle, that's a big one. That's a big mover. We're not just talking about how individuals are going to be affected, which obviously is important, but we're talking about how an entire country of housing is going to be affected as well, too. And I know you guys have an awesome campaign going on right now around We Build, We Vote. So we just wanted to have you on here to talk a little bit more about what to look for, what to talk about, what to be paying attention to ultimately make those decisions. So maybe to kick things off, I'd love to hear your perspective a little bit more around how do election cycles, kind of directly impact not just the overall economy, but specifically the construction industry with things like interest rates or affordability, labor shortages, some of those things.
Yeah, so I always say that this election year is the most important election since the last one. It does seem like, given the importance of our industry and the fluctuations, like you said, whether it's interest rates or housing policy or business policy, and then the business cycle that is affected by all of those things, it really is important for us. And this cycle is perhaps the most important in my career in Washington, D.C. now, which is coming up on 30 years, and my 26 years at NAHB. This is the first time where housing is the centerpiece of the presidential candidates' economic plans, and not just housing, but housing supply, right? We've talked about housing crises before, housing affordability. That's been, people have talked about it. But when you've got former President Trump and Vice President Harris on the campaign trail talking about adding more housing, whether it's for rent or for ownership, that's a really important moment for us. And so the candidates do matter. And more importantly, the policies that they're talking about now and how we can influence those policies over the next 4 years are critical to how this industry continues to build in the future.
When you look up and down the ballot, is it just the presidential seat that's going to impact these policies? I know there are both the House and the Senate. There's a lot of seats up for grabs. There's a lot of people running for re-election. How do you advise builders and our construction company owners to evaluate their options up and down the ballot?
Everybody is kind of taking their cue from the top of the ticket. So congressional races across the country, housing is on the lips of everybody who's running, especially in those swing states or where housing shortage is really acute. The high growth states, Nevada, Arizona, Florida. So you've got what I would call the down ballot races, House and Senate races, and then you get into local or even state level races where the reason why housing is I'd like to say it's because all the great policy work that NHB has done, and that's part of it. But it's really because we finally have broken housing in this country, that supply has not met demand, even though interest rates have kept demand tampered down. We've now reached crisis levels where people who want to find a house can't even find a house, nonetheless pay for it. So it really is on the minds of voters, which means that if you're a smart politician in this country, and we can have a good debate on whether or not we've got smart politicians in the country, you're paying attention to housing, you're talking about housing solutions. And so for us, it's great that the presidential candidates want to talk about it and the administration wants to talk about it, but we're going to need Congress to enact a lot of these proposals or be a partner with the White House as much as we need our local and state governments as well. So it's a whole of government issue at the moment. And you need to, if you're a builder or a developer or a homeowner or a renter out there, you should listen to the candidates and find out if they've got proposals that are going to help you find and afford a home in the future.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, Jim. And I love where your head's at right there, specifically around, the most important thing people can do right now is just get educated and understand what those policies are, how they're going to be affected by them, if it's going to help improve the affordability and the demand that we need to reach those levels that you kind of alluded to.
That's
right. So I'm curious, what do you advise if I'm a listener, listening to this right now that owns a construction business? What's the best way to get up to speed real quick and understand what these different policies are and how they're going to affect me?
Yeah, I first foremost go to the campaign websites, your local, state, or federal, or national, lawmakers. You see what they've got in writing. That's the easiest place to do it. You can hunt around on the web and watch videos of them, but when they're on the campaign stump, they kind of talk at high levels. But let's see what are the every campaign employees, policy people, they're the ones writing the pages. So that's where you get educated really quickly on what they stand for. NAHB.org is a resource. We've got a whole election 2024 campaign page where you can go and see our take on those proposals and where we've separated them out. And we're a great resource for that as well. And then obviously other housing providers. I mean, there's a lot of information out there when it comes to housing policy, but that's what I would say. Start with the campaigns, and then start cutting through, their campaign rhetoric and really drill down on what it means for you, customers, and you as a business person.
In the election, it's technically already underway because early voting starts at different times in all the states. So people are casting their votes. They're dropping off their ballots at boxes. Let's dive into some of the areas that might be of concern for the residential housing industry. Things like, for instance, affordability of housing.
Right.
When the election shakes out in a couple weeks, what are we anticipating are going to be some of the ripple effects? Like, what are we looking for post-election?
Sure. So I think when I think about the next administration, some of the proposals that former President Trump or Vice President Harris have, they're going to take congressional action. So that's going to take time to flesh those proposals out, move them through Congress. That's where we come in, right? That's where our lobbying team come in to translate those ideas into policies, into law. Okay, but that's going to take a while. But in the meantime, I'm looking for somebody who's going to continue to set the economy on the right footing by lowering regulations and making sure that the inflationary pressures we've seen over the last 2 years continue to subside, which then it also helps the job market, right? We want to make sure the job market comes back strong. We have a labor issue in the home building industry, so making sure that we've got the right conditions to bring more labor into the marketplace, and that will then translate to the Federal Reserve continuing its easing policies and cutting interest rates, which then will again translate into the markets feeling more comfortable and mortgage rates beginning to fall, and then we'll start seeing that churn in the housing market where the existing housing stock comes back into play. We get more buyers in the marketplace, and then we get going, right? Then the market really gets cooking, and then we get ready for that growth period we have over the next 5 or 7 years, and we can start building, the 1.5 million single family and multifamily units that this industry can do over the next decade or so. So that's the way I look at it. And I travel all across the country, talk to builders, and what I hear is that there really is a constriction in the marketplace right now. Even though interest rates are starting to fall, there's a real concern about who the next president's going to be, and they want to get this election over with to find out who is going to be at the helm of the economy for the next 4 years.
Well, to your point, it sounds like it's going to be a long-term fix, right? Like it's not like the election ends the next day, suddenly all these policies are in play and the labor shortage is fixed. It's a long play. And It sounds like from your conversations with builders, are they taking pause? Are they continuing to march forward on, like, what is, if they wait for the election, if they wait to see who's going to be the president, like what are they risking in growing their business, or should they be waiting to see?
Yeah, I think it's more buyers are waiting for the election. I think in builders obviously responding to market demand. So that's why I think there's this kind of little trough right here at the moment, because demand is right under the surface, right? Interest rates have done what they were supposed to do. High interest rates have tamped down demand, but demand is still there. Like the millennials are in their prime home building buying ages, and they are ready to go. They just need a signal that rates are going to make housing more affordable. And for a builder, when our economists talk to our members, we're constantly telling you better be ready to go, because things are going to turn, and we want to make sure we're ready to go. But in order for us to meet demand, right, we got to make sure local governments are lowering the burdens of land use regulations and permitting times and permitting fees, so that we can find the land we need to develop and build. We need more labor. We need more labor supply so we can lower the cost of labor so we can build houses more affordably. And then if demand, I fully expect building materials to see some fluctuations and spikes over the next year or so, just because demand's going to pick up, and they've been kind of sitting on production waiting for that signal as well, that home building is going to come back full throttle. So there's a lot of optimism. I'm very bullish on the next, like I said, 5 to 7 years for the industry, but there's also some headwinds out there that we're going to have to be aware of that could be a check on building for the next little while.
Yeah, I love listening to you talk, Jim. 10 minutes into this interview, exceeding the hype so far.
Thank you. You're very kind. Good.
Quick halftime check in there. But what I'm curious, obviously, you worked as the chief lobbyist for a long time. So I'm curious, as you're talking through some of these things around just like kind of some examples that you've seen in cycles past, whereas, after the election cycle happens and it becomes time to start implementing and lobbying for some of those regulation policy changes. I'm just curious if you have any examples that may resonate with some of the builders listening to this in the past of, okay, this happened, and because of that, this happened, to kind of connect the dots of what they can expect this next cycle.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. So the 2008 election, that's President Obama wins. 2008, we're right at the front end of the Great Recession. Things are cratering all around us. President Obama comes in 2009, and he's going to enact an economic stimulus plan to kind of forestall the worst parts of the Great Recession. Obviously, we know that we were probably too little, too late at that point for the depth and breadth of that recession. But for housing in particular, one of the things that we pushed is we saw the market start to crater for housing was how can we build more homes in order to kind of not only keep our members busy, but also supply people. So we worked with the administration as well as Congress in that economic stimulus package to pass a first-time home buyer tax credit. I think it was a $7,500 first-time home buyer tax credit. It did a great job of stimulating buyers that were already going to buy a home. Maybe they were going to buy them at the end of the year, and it just pushed them into the middle of the year, or they just pushed them sooner in the economic cycle. It didn't have its intended effect, which is to bring new buyers into the marketplace. New buyers were still way too skittish about foreclosures that were rampant at the time. They didn't feel comfortable about the economy, but the people that did have money, did have plans to buy, they got a $7,500 tax credit, and again, just moved them earlier in their cycle, but no new buyers. And there's a lesson to be learned there that even the best intentioned policies don't have the right, they have unintended consequences. So, we're coming out of this recession. If someone came to me on Capitol and said, "Hey, remember that first-time home buyer tax credit? We'd love to jumpstart the market with that," I would say, not the right policy. Let's think of something different this time around. So again, to kind of connect your dot there, elections have consequences. We were able to lobby wholeheartedly for the industry to move that's a pretty big policy piece, but not quite the right prescription for the crisis that moment. And as you know, in 2009, 2008, we did not forestall a very deep and very painful recession. So that's one of my big lessons over my career is being right. It's important to learn from your mistakes as it is from your victories.
I'm really interested to hear about a day in the life of lobbying our representatives for the construction industry. Like, I think there are some perceptions of what lobbying is like, but kind of pull back the veil. Tell us, what does that look like? How did those conversations start?
Yeah. So they're the perceptions. We all walk around with giant bags of cash, and we have little horns and a pork tail, right? Lobbying is a dirty word. But in what I'd love your listeners and viewers to know as a recovering lobbyist, I'm going to go as basic as the U.S. Constitution. You are allowed under the U.S. Constitution to petition your government. I am this industry's petitioner, right? You all can't be in the halls of Congress or in the White House in the West Wing asking the government to do things for you. That's what your lobbyist and your trade association does for you. We are your protected constitutional right to petition your government. And so that's what we do. And there is a lobbyist for an association for everything in the world. You look at all the association lobbyists, you got to curl your toes. I can't believe we lobby for that. And so a day in the life, a lot of it is, I'll wake up and I'll read, kind of the Hill rags, as we call them, Roll Call, The Hill, Politico, kind of get the flavor of what's going on during the day. And then you're up meeting with lawmakers. And we have the beautiful thing about lobbying for the home builders is that we touch so many different areas and committees: tax policy, housing policy, environmental policy, military policy. There's all kinds. So we are in almost every congressional office, and we're in every committee office up there, and we track in any one given two-year congressional cycle, we'll be tracking over 100 separate issues that impact the industry. Now, some are in different phases of either likelihood or heat, right? Front of the stove, back of the stove. But we are constantly tracking things to either stop them or to move them forward. I tell people all the time, the FBI rarely tells you about the evil plots that they stop, but there are a lot of things that they were protected from we don't know about. We do a lot of that. There are a lot of I've never met a member of Congress who is anti-housing, but there are some really bad ideas out there, and our job is to make sure that we politely remind them why that's a really bad idea, and flex our muscles. I mean, there are home builders in every congressional district. We are a huge constituency. Politically, we are very important. We're a huge economic driver, so we carry a lot of weight. I mean, our listeners. I mean, the people of this industry carry a lot of weight, and I'm just one part of that to make sure the government is working for it.
That really resonates with even the work we do here at Buildertrend. We were just talking today in a team marketing meeting. Like, to your point, the industry accounts for 16% of the GDP. It's like the foundation of America. These are business owners, our customers that we work with, are building our homes across America. It's what makes our communities interesting. It's the houses we live in, and whatever we can do to make them better is better for the country too.
Yeah. So I always say that home ownership is the gateway to the middle class in the United States. It's not your 401k, it's not your pension, it's your ability to purchase a home and grow with it. Build equity, buy a bigger home if your family is growing. Provide retirements. My parents are in their late 70s and early 80s. Their home is their retirement security. You can take care of your parents by virtue of the equity you build up in your home as they age. You can put your children through college or trade school by virtue of the equity you build up in your house. It truly is the gateway to the middle class, and we need to protect that. And that's what we do at the National Association. But that's what, and as you said, the members and builders out there everywhere, it's true. We build the American dream, but it is more than that. It's economic and social. Not social security, but social security for Americans.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. And I do have to give a quick aside. The biggest fan of this podcast in the entire world is my mom, and her and her husband are both lobbyists in the state of Kansas.
Sweet.
So I'm sure they're listening right now. So I just had to give a quick shout out to them. I'm sure they're smiling ear to ear.
No doubt your mom is wonderful. She does not have a forked tail
and
horns and walk around with bags of money, right? So
I'm sure they appreciated that shining some light on that. But what you spoke to at the end there, NAHB specifically is so uniquely and well positioned to be that voice for the construction and the building industry, because you are the largest network of builders in the country there.
Right.
So I'm curious on how do you leverage that vast wealth of knowledge and community and input you have from this large network of people that are actually boots on the ground building the houses and shaping the future? How do you not get overwhelmed, but actually leverage the input you're hearing from your members to ultimately go and lobby and campaign for them for what's going to be best for them?
Yeah, so I mean, just by the virtue of the policies that our members set for us, or by virtue of how our members direct our political giving to make sure that we are electing pro-housing candidates to Congress, all the way down to we will help them lobby at the local level to make sure that the regulatory environment, the local level, is conducive to building more housing, and that's really the way we do that. So it's listening to our members. Like I said, I travel all over the country, and every stop, I hear nuances. But I will say this, that to the builders across the country, you're not alone. California may seem like the end of the world, and oh my God, it's a tough place to build. But I promise you, in what I would consider the free state of Texas and low regulatory environment, a lot of building, they have the same issues as California or Kansas or Connecticut. It may be degrees, but there's still the same frustrations and the nuances of it, that it's hard to build a house affordably right now. And that's why I'm so gratified that we're talking about supply all across the electoral perspective or spectrum, and and how we can translate that into policy. But it really is, members need to get educated. They need to vote. They need to make sure that their spouses vote, that their workers vote, that they're encouraged, participate in the political process, flex our muscles. Like I said, 16% of U.S. GDP, but in this next month, we need to flex our political muscles, because that translates into policy power, which translates into doing well for our members. And ultimately, remember, the ultimate goal here is to provide people with housing opportunity, whether it's rental or ownership, and we do that.
You just had the NAHB Fall Council Leadership meeting down in San Antonio a couple weeks ago. We had a member of our team, Carly Ward, went and checked that out. What was kind of the rallying cry for members? Like, it's, just a week or so ago. So just a month heading into the election, and maybe it can be a rallying cry as well for our listeners.
Yeah, so we kind of rolled out our campaign slogan here in the closing weeks, but kind of two of them. One, let builders build. That's number one, and two, we build, we vote. It's really important in this moment to make sure that the men and women of the industry who will build housing in this country, that they are heard politically, and that is the most important thing. And remind policymakers that they need to be looking to the National Association. They need to be looking to their builders for the solutions to the housing crisis in the country. And so we wanted to send a powerful message to our members to make sure, again, the political muscle is really important in all levels of government. And we've got a great story to tell. Again, just by we provide people the basic necessity of life, and that is shelter. And along the way of just doing that, we are providing people with economic security, and that needs to be said. And we need to make sure that we are building more housing for more people, so that they can find a home, that kids can leave school or trade school, and they can find a home in their communities. Or elderly, aging folks, they can move closer to their grandparents. Nurses, teachers, policemen, firefighters, our retail workers, they can live in the communities they want to live in rather than being forced to move out to cheaper housing. We need to build more housing in this country. We will lower prices, and we'll make housing opportunity available to everybody.
Yeah, like when we hear from our builders, like they're ready to go, like they're
ready to go.
Build.
Yeah, that's right. Build, baby, build.
Jim, before we close out the episode, Charlie, this is me bringing the fun to the podcast. I've been behind the scenes on the podcast for a long time, my team, and now I've stepped into this seat. So I keep trying to bring games to the table. But all of our guests always have such interesting points of view and so much knowledge. I think we need to start a building code book club. Do you have a recommendation for like either the best book you've read so far, or a good like intro to like housing policy book?
Oh, wow. Intro to housing policy.
I mean, maybe that's like, if that's not the best book you read so far and it was actually like some sort of, thriller, you can drop that one too.
Yeah, no, let's see. I'm trying to think. So as I moved into this role, I tend to read more, kind of strategy and management books. I'll tell you the one I'm in the middle of now, or starting to read now. It's the book I'm reading now is about the why, right? It's really about if you're going to present something, it's start with the why.
Is it Simon Sinek?
I think that's
start
exactly
with why.
what it is.
I have this one sitting on my desk right now.
Yeah. So I just one of our builders handed it to me, and I've actually started to read it and realize that as I've been a new CEO, there's so many things that I want to do, but yes, you can do them by force of will. Yes, you can do them because you can convince people that it's probably the right thing to do, but taking a moment to help everyone understand the why I think is really important. So that's the book I'm starting now, and it's really resonated with me. Just in my first almost year and a half here, there have been a couple instances where I didn't start with the why, and it made it a much more difficult process. So so that's the one I'm working on now.
Wow. Yeah, I think that one probably connects well to lobbying too. Like when you're trying to achieve some common goal, or you got to start with, why it makes sense to push for it, why it's your end goal. So whether that's management or lobbying the government. But yeah, thank you for sharing. We're gonna start a book club.
Jim, I think we're wrapping up here. Thank you so much for your time today. Before we sign off, obviously I love the rallying cries, and a huge shout out to your marketing team who came up with those. They land great. We build, we vote. Get on vote, get informed. Obviously, the important kind of calls to action there. Just curious if you had anything to kind of leave us off with as we wrap this up on just the best ways for our listeners to get involved with NAHB's advocacy efforts and stay informed as the industry continues to develop. Yeah,
thanks. So I really think the NAHB.org website is just a great source of information for a variety of things. If you're listening and you're not a member of your local homebuilders association, I encourage you to check it out. They are your representatives at the local level, and by virtue of joining your local association, you get memberships at the state association as well as the national association. Every person and every industry has a responsibility to advocate for their industry and their livelihood. And if you're not doing that, then you're missing out on an opportunity to not only take care of your own personal financial future and business, but in our case as home builders, you are taking care of homeowners and renters for the future. And the mission of NAHB is to provide housing opportunities for all and provide professional excellence for its members. And that's what we do. And we have to wear two hats. I get to take care of you and help you become a better businessman or businesswoman. And in turn, in doing that, you provide the American dream of home ownership or a safe, decent, affordable rental home for people. That's what drives me every day, and encourage any of the professionals out there to think about joining the team.
Just a fantastic note to end on, Jim. Thank you so much for your time today. I learned a ton. I'm sure our listeners learned a ton too. We build, we vote. Let's go get it. You got it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Courtney. Well, Courtney, we just had Jim from NAHB on the building code. What did you say? Did it live up to the hype? I feel like it exceeded all expectations. How many notes did you write down? I wrote down. I've just got like 2 pages, front and back of notes. Okay. I can't wait to get my content team's probably sitting in that booth like, oh, great. She's going to assign some blogs. She's going to assign some follow-up. I feel like we could do a whole data report on how businesses can prepare for the election cycle. I think Jim, brought up a lot of good points about, staying on top of these things year round. The issues aren't solved with one election, but it can really inform smaller issues that we're going to have to deal with in the months to come. Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately I was motivated and inspired by what he talked about, because when he talked about the national economy and a lot of these different things, that the biggest leg that we have to stand on is the construction industry and home building specifically, through this interview that we talked about. And that's kind of a cool responsibility to have for anybody in the space here, in such an important time of year, as he kind of alluded to. The next couple months are going to dictate the next, 5, 6, 7 years for not just our industry that we're working in, but our nation and our economy as a whole. So I'm fired up. I'm going to come back from this vacation in Florida and be ready to go to work in Buildertrend, and hopefully our listeners are fired up as well. Yeah, you're going to get all of our listeners jealous that you're down in Florida instead of here at HQ, and where I had to be in the studio all by myself today. So yeah, I don't even think we referenced that in the intro. So hopefully people made it long enough in the episode here. Yeah, they had to stick around all the way to the end to find out where you were. Maybe I was telling Emery, who runs our social media account, I was like, let's post a poll on Instagram of who's your favorite host in the building code studio today, because then it could only be me. Okay, I see where we're coming from. Well, Courtney, fantastic interview. Thank you again, Jim, if you're listening to this, for coming on. I think that'll about do it for us here at the Building Code. As always, please, 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 I don't think I've ever used that many pleases before. Like, review, and subscribe. And obviously join us on the Building Code crew on Facebook. But other than that, until next time, I'm Charlie Burtwhistle.
And I'm Courtney Matern.
Peace.
Thanks for watching the video. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content brought to you by Buildertrend.